Welcome to Our View, the podcast, where we're changing the conversation about disability one story at a time. Here at Our View, we're all about education, awareness, and shifting perspectives. With each episode, we dive into honest, meaningful conversations with individuals from across the disabled community, amplifying voices, sharing lived experiences, and challenging the way society sees disability. Because disability isn't a limitation, it's a part of the human experience. So pull up a seat and join us as we broaden the view and bring real, powerful stories into focus. This is Our View. I'd like to welcome everyone back to a new episode of Our View, the podcast, where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. Today, my guest is James Ian. So, James, thank you for joining me for this conversation. I'm happy to have you on as a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Arthur. Excited to be talking with you.
Yes, you're welcome. So to start off the podcast, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story? Tell us, who is James Ian?
Thank you so much, Arthur. Yeah, so I have my disability. It's a physical disability. It's called spinal muscular atrophy. There are a number of types of we call it SMA for short. I have a type that typically the symptoms become more pronounced during like puberty. So when I was born, they didn't know that I had a physical disability. Like I exhibited symptoms, but it was really hard to tell. So I pretty much, physically, I pretty much did not present much differently from people without disabilities, essentially. And when I hit right before I turned 15, I started to like fall down more and trip more, and so the symptoms became more prevalent. And one day, my dad was like, saw me get up off of a chair, and I was going to go upstairs and do something. And I used my hands just to like kind of like lightly push off the chair. And my dad was like, get up out of that chair, but don't use your hands to push off. And I couldn't do it. And it was like a very subtle thing. Like I could get up very easily, but it was just like a quick little push off. I couldn't do it without pushing off. So then they took me to doctors. I was initially misdiagnosed with muscular dystrophy, given a very grim prognosis. And then, later on had some more testing, saw some more specialists, and then the SMA diagnosis was given to me. And at that time, there was not, it wasn't a lot known about SMA. So again, the prognosis there was, they were talking about life expectancy would be shorter for me, and then I wouldn't be, walking, at X age, and by the time I was 30, I wouldn't be here, things of that nature. So it was a tough diagnosis. I am an ambulatory wheelchair user, so I actually just got my first wheelchair, my first power chair. This past August, so I'm still getting used to the wheelchair life, and using that more. But up until then, I did have like a manual chair. I would use a cane sometimes, but like I pretty much just walked on my own, lived independently, drove a car, all those things. Um, in terms of outside of the disability, like who I am, I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I'm an actor. Those things spoke to me pretty much from the beginning of my life. I was a really good piano player, singer, songwriter, and so that's definitely like a very big part of who I am. It has influenced a lot of my life and like the things that I'm interested in, and in terms of like my output and what I like to do for sure. It's also kind of guided the disability journey for me as well. And then in addition to my artistic background, I'm also like I went to academics were a very big part of my childhood. My parents placed a lot of emphasis on that. So I graduated from Georgetown for undergrad and law school. I do not practice, but I do have my JD. So when I tell people that info, they're pretty surprised that I have like such a rigorous like academic background, but I'm also like very much a very like laid back creative type. So that's kind of like Me, bass layer.
Yes, that's great. It's funny when you were talking about your education there and you said from law school. I said, "Oh wow." Like, oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah. It's
Wow.
I have a very interesting path, I would say. So
Yeah. Yeah. A few things that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on
yeah.
with you saying, which I appreciate it, you're an ambulatory wheelchair user.
Yep.
And we're again, we're big on raising awareness and changing the tone of conversation about
Hmm.
disabilities here. And that term wheelchair user is so important
Yep.
because so many times in news stories and movies and everything, you hear wheelchair bound.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it's just like, no, our wheelchairs give us so much freedom. Like they
Yep.
really do.
Yep. I was watching some show yesterday. I can't remember what it was, and they literally said in the show, "Oh, they were confined to a wheelchair." And I was like, "No,
Yes.
like this thing, I wish I got my wheelchair sooner, to be honest, because it allows me to do like I was a very independent person,
Hmm.
I've always had like lived on my own, like I mentioned, and like the wheelchair now allows me to do even more
Right.
independently on my own and safely, So it's like I always say that this wheelchair is like opens up my life in so many very cool ways that like I didn't even consider before.
Yeah, yeah. And I also like what you just said, safely.
Yeah.
It allows you to do more safely because,
Yes.
with me, like I use my crutches, but I don't have the best balance, never
Yep.
have. If a floor is wet or something, or if there's a piece of paper or something on the floor that I don't
Yeah.
see, like that can be very dangerous for people like
Yes.
me and yourself, when we're up
Yep.
walking. Um, so allowing, using a wheelchair is much safer in a lot of cases, and it allows me to do so much more than I could ever do walking.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
can go further distances. I'm able to wheel my chair and carry things at the same time that I wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to do
Yep.
while I was walking.
Yep.
So it's really I wanted to point that out that that you did say that
Sure.
the ambulatory wheelchair user, because that is words matter, and it's really
Yes.
important to say that because like you said recently you just heard confined to a wheelchair and
Yep.
um and the other things that people say, suffering from, and it's like
Yeah.
like I have rough days like everybody else, but I'm just living. I have, I have
Yep.
spina bifida, but I'm just living with it. Like I'm not suffering from it
Exactly.
or anything like that. It's a rough day sometimes, but so everybody else has rough days as well. So
Yes.
just really again changing that tone of conversation about
Yep.
disabilities and how we're addressed and discussed in different places and spaces is really really important. And you mentioned that you are a musician, songwriter, and modeling and acting and doing all these
Yep.
amazing things. And one of the things we, had talked about briefly to discuss here on the podcast
Yeah.
is some of the challenges you have had with getting into those spaces of, modeling and acting as a person with a disability, person of color, facing
Yep.
ableism and racism in those spaces. So can you talk to us about some of those challenges that you may have come up against in the entertainment world, I guess is the way, the best way to put it all in one under one umbrella.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Arthur. Yeah, and I'll touch on all that stuff. So, initially, so like I mentioned before, my diagnosis that came like right before I turned 15. I was actually a child actor. So I did like commercials. I was a series regular on a BET series. When I was like about 9 for a couple of seasons, the show got canceled. But, I didn't know that I was disabled then. And so when I would go out for auditions, I mean, I had a pretty good booking success rate, like people were like, oh, he's a cute kid. Like, and throw it on there. So like I actually I had a lot of success very, very early on. And that's not to be arrogant or anything. That's just the way, the way it was. But when I got older, I kind of stepped away from acting to do, like, typical sport stuff and whatnot for a little bit. And then when I got my diagnosis, I was always like wanted to be a musician, more so I think in my younger years, and than an actor. Like, I always loved both, but at some point I kind of was like really focused on being a professional musician. And when I got my diagnosis, I remember like one of the first things that I thought, as I was like, doing, developing this, my music and stuff, I was like, all I ever saw on TV was really horrible disability representation. It was like folks who were like the butt of a joke, making fun of them, being pitied, like, oh, it's so sad you're, and I was like, and even then you didn't even see much, you didn't really see a lot of the disability. So when I got my diagnosis, I was like, oh my God, like I'm not going to be able to become a professional singer, musician, or an actor, because that just does not exist. And it's like they're going to put me in those things of these like really bad portrayals, so that was like the first, I would say, obstacle, was like, where are those roles? How do you even get in the door? Because I'm pretty much being told no. Like, I wasn't seeing disabled singers dancing on stage or in like the R&B groups I liked or anything like that. So I was like, this is just not happening. So then as I kind of like got older, I started to just kind of like not really factor in the disability in terms of like my performances and stuff. And I was, physically, my body was different then. I was walking, I had a lot more mobility and stuff. And so it wasn't like it wasn't a big thing to that was kind of, wasn't like really affecting much. But then, after law school, I remember I did my band that I was in, we got asked to be like a national commercial, and I was like, oh man, this is like so fun. I really want to do this. And then I started being like, well, how am I going to do this as a disabled person? And I was just like so lost. It was like nothing was popping up, disabled roles or anything. I ended up moving to LA after law school at some point, and then lo and behold, I found an agency that represented disabled talent, and I was like, oh wow, this does exist. There is like a space. There is a space for me to do this, and so I started to get auditions and stuff, but it was like much slower than when I was auditioning as a person who did not know that they had a disability. So in the non-disabled space, it was like a lot more auditions. In the disabled space, it was like I'd go months without something. And then, I booked some things here and there. I booked a national commercial. I started to do like, I booked modeling gigs and, things of that nature. Some theater stuff, which was really cool. But then I started to like really feel the burn of the racism within the within the disability space. So it was like, the roles were few and far in between. You're going out against other disabled people, but then it was like I was going out for a lot of stuff that was open, quote unquote, to race in terms of the disability. But then it was like I wasn't booking those roles. It was going to like white disabled actors all the time. And then I just started to see like how incredibly difficult it was to be like a black person or a person of color in the disability space. And I can count the number of times on my one hand, that I've seen like a black wheelchair user or a black person with any, disability. It would be like open, but it would be like I'd lose it to a white person. And anytime now that I see it come up where it's like open to race but it's disabled, I'm like, I was like, I ain't getting that. Like, that is that's probably gonna go to a white person. So it was like I was starting to see that a lot. I would start to see like my white friends with disabilities come into the game like way later than I did, or my other peers, and like not really have the training or the resumes or the experience, and they just start booking stuff, like music wise and acting wise. So I was like, it was just it's a hard pill to swallow, you know. I was like, not only do we have to deal with being disabled, we have to deal with like being black or a person of color and disabled, which is like two punches to the gut, you know, like it's really, really hard. So I was experiencing like a lot of that. And then you would also just hear the chatter amongst the community and like people saying whatever negative thing or, you know, like just in the social circles and whatnot. And then I started to hear like white disabled people like, you know, like say racist stuff, but then also be like, oh, well, like, oh, well, they started to like talk, they started to have like more of like a victim, you know, like this big victimhood kind of thing going on. And it was like almost like equating it to like the black experience. And I was like, nah, that is, we're not there. That they're two very, very different things. Let's be clear about that. But yeah, it's just like you start to see it you know, like I was just with the, you know, it just became pretty obvious, you know, like I was very excited to be like, oh, there's like a, you know, disabled talent agents or whatever, and there's roles for that, but then you become like very disappointed and like depressed because you're like, oh man, like the racism's there, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point that I was having a conversation with somebody the other day where um, my I think about like my mom and her generation of people. She's in her 70s and
Yeah.
um looking for people that look like you on TV, in movies, in
Yep.
commercials, wherever. You're a musician, so looking for the musical acts.
Yep.
Like you said, there were no disabled people in the R&B groups and stuff, that you
Nope.
that you liked. No, nobody with visible disabilities at
Yeah,
least. Um,
exactly.
so that kind of thing, for Black people, I think in the 80s it was, the Cosby
Hmm.
Show was a big thing, because, he was a doctor, she was a lawyer, and, they lived in New York City. And so that was like a big thing for people to, look at on TV every week. That was a weekly show that came on,
Yep.
and, they had the children and the family, they both had their own professions.
Yeah.
So it's things like that that we look for. And, being at the for you and I, and others, people at the intersectionality of being Black and disabled,
Yeah.
okay, we see the Black representation on TV, but we don't quite see the disabled representation
Yeah.
in
Yep.
films and movies, or, modeling campaigns
Yeah.
and things like that. You think about those magazines, Vogue and all those other
Yeah.
magazines, and like the Met Gala is like a really big thing in New York City every year, and you don't see people with physical disabilities walking these red carpets and
Right.
things like that. So, as you said, you don't see it, so it's just like, oh, you get to thinking like, oh, well, then I can't do that work because I don't see
Right.
anybody else doing that work.
Right.
And that is, it's such a shame. The conversation I was having with somebody, it was actually earlier this morning. Um, is travel commercials. You don't see
Yeah.
people with disabilities for these hotel commercials, for these cruise lines, for
Yep.
these airlines, places like Disney, all these big companies that spend a lot of money on these commercials.
Hmm.
You don't ever see people with physical disabilities checking into these hotels or enjoying any of these, amusement parks or other big spaces. But
Exactly. Yeah.
and so because you don't see that, I might think as a person with a disability, as a wheelchair user, that, oh, I can't go on a cruise.
Hmm.
But cruise ships have accessible rooms,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're
Exactly.
very and
Yeah.
they're very nice rooms, I've
Yep.
heard.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
why not, like, why not highlight that as part of your marketing campaign?
Right. Right.
It's those things have to start changing at some point,
Yes.
because we're people with disabilities. We have friends, we have families. We like to have a good time and go out and do things. We enjoy vacations and
Hmm.
everything everybody else likes to do. And
Yeah.
it has gotten better, but it's still a long way to go. So, it's really important that you did bring that up, like noticing the lack of disabled representation in these spaces, and then, getting into it yourself and then realizing,
Right.
the ableism and the racism that exists in these spaces. That's something that I've always had to think of myself because of, the position I have as like executive
Hmm.
director of a
Yep.
nonprofit. So I'm the one that's out in the front. I'm the one that
Yep.
gets all the emails and interacts with all of the people. And a lot of my work is done online and through phone calls and emails and things like that. So when people meet me for the first time, I've had people go right by me
Yeah.
and ask
Yep.
other people, "Oh, I'm looking for Arthur Aston."
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, about 10 feet back that way. You'll walk
Yeah.
right by him."
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I have to, you try not to, but my mind has gone to, okay, did they walk by me because I was black, because I was disabled?
Right.
And, I've been doing this work for a long time, since my early 30s. Or did they
Yep.
walk by me because I was young and they didn't think I was old enough to
Yep. Yeah.
have a position like executive director, as a younger person? So it's
Right.
like, which one of the three? What combination of the three? Was it a little
Right.
bit of all three?
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Right.
Arthur is an older person's name, so did they think it would naturally just be somebody older?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's just all those things have crossed my mind at
Yep.
different times.
It's not
Yeah, it
uncommon,
is.
unfortunately, you know?
Right. It isn't uncommon, and that's the one of the great things about having this podcast, because we can have these conversations,
Yeah.
and acknowledge that it does happen. It's not
Yes.
right. It definitely isn't right. And just, we don't know who might listen to this, and, they can, think, when you know better, you do better kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes.
And so,
That is the
yeah.
hope. Yep.
Yeah, so it's just when you think, it might not be that person in the wheelchair who is, executive director, it just might
Yeah.
be them.
Right.
And,
Right.
and start with that person, and if it's not them, they can direct you to who you might need to talk to. But
Right.
it's really important, to bring up these types of conversations
Hmm.
and experiences that we have had, because they are real. They're real
Yeah.
experiences. They happen to us, they happen to other people.
Yep.
And so again, to raise that awareness of what really goes on, and the real life experiences we have had is really important to mention on this on podcast and other spaces that we are in. So
Yes.
thank you for bringing that up.
Of
And
course. Thank you for sharing that story too. I
yeah,
appreciate that very much.
yeah. So I have just two more questions for you.
Yeah.
The first one is, where can people learn more about you? Any social media sites or websites that you have? Where can they find your music, acting, or modeling things that you're up to?
Yeah, so I thank you for that, Arthur. So most my the only social media I really use is Instagram. You can find me at James Ian Music, James IAN Music. I post most of my stuff there. Um, I have a couple of agents that represent me, so like my stuff is on their website, ZBD Talent. You can see like my modeling portfolio. I'm also with a Zuri agency as well. So like, in terms of that stuff, like for like, images and whatnot. And then my music, I have everything. I have stuff on Spotify. So that's just James Ian on Spotify. And then um I have like YouTube videos and stuff. So like all my music stuff will be on Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. I mostly use Spotify just because it's easier. I know there's Spotify is not with has a lot of issues, and so not condoning those at all. But That's where my stuff is primarily, and then like YouTube. Um, and I have some stuff like floating around. Like I'm on a connected, currently on a connected TV commercial for some folks. It's spotlighting spinal muscular atrophy. It's on Hulu and like Peacock, I believe. I have not seen it yet, but it is out there because someone posted it on one of the social sites and was like, "Hey, they're like, I've never seen a commercial about SMA, and this is really really cool." So currently on that, and like a lot of the work that I do, like I never ever get to see it. Like I think there's still two or three projects I've done in the last 2 years, and I have not seen like print stuff, and I haven't seen the finished products, but like it happened, like, but it's out there. So if you see anything, let me know. Yes,
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with
of course.
everybody. And it's interesting with people who do acting and things like that or music. Uh, when you ask them about themselves, and it's like, oh, I don't watch the stuff that I'm in, or I don't listen to
Yeah,
my
yeah,
own
yeah.
stuff, or so
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
do listen
that's
to my own stuff. It's hard, like watch, like I listen to my own stuff just because, like, I don't know why, but like I understand when I was younger, it was really hard for me to watch myself on my commercials and like the shows and stuff. Uh, Now I like it's much easier to do it, but when I was a kid, it was like painful. Like I don't know why. And I understand that thing. It was like really hard, but I guess as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten over it. But it's a thing. I don't know why it's a thing, but
It is. It's definitely a thing. That's like with the podcast. It's like I have to edit
yeah.
the episodes and it's just like who is that talking? And it's like, oh, it's me.
Right.
Like, like, oh
You're
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, yeah. But like you're doing
You're
great work,
talking.
Arthur, and you
Thank
need
you.
to and I hope you feel proud when you see
Yes.
yourself. So
Yes,
good.
definitely. I was sharing this with someone else today again. It's really I know this is all bigger than me. It's not about me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm proud about, and I'm proud that people see that.
Yep.
That I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for, many different people, a larger community of people that I happen to
Yeah.
be a part of as well. So
I love
that's
that.
yeah, and just to really, because I know again with the ADA and other laws and things that have passed, we have come a long way as far as helping people with disabilities live more successful and fulfilling
Hmm.
lives. But there is much more to do, and we can't stop. So
Right.
that's the bigger thing for me to looking at the big picture, and looking ahead for what lies for us in the future, ahead for us. So, yeah, thank you for that, and
Of
I will be
course.
sure to let you know if I see anything that you're
Thank you,
that
Arthur.
you're in.
And thank you, Arthur.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that too, because it is hard. Like you touched on it earlier. It's like I think you probably have had a similar experience. It's like I'm often one of a very few amount of Black folks
Hmm.
or disabled folks, and definitely the only Black and disabled person in the majority of spaces that I'm in. Unfortunately, because those there are lots of systemic barriers and all of those things, but it is I experienced like a lot of discomfort at that. I think when I was younger and being like the only person in the room that looked like me. But going back to what you said, I do feel like it's bigger than me and the work
Hmm.
is important. And even just being in those rooms, even if it was uncomfortable at times, like I felt that it was really important to be in the space because the hope is other people like me will come behind me and be in those spaces too, and
Right.
in greater numbers, and doing things of that nature. So I've been thinking about a lot that thought as we've been talking, and so I appreciate
Hmm.
you touched on that, and I think it is important to like do this work because it is hopefully we will see more of ourselves in the future um in the places that we occupy. So
Yes, definitely. I fully agree with that 100%.
yep.
So my last question, because you are a musician and songwriter,
Yeah.
I have to ask you, do you have a favorite musical artist? And or what is your favorite album of all time?
Oh, that's really I love that, Arthur. It's really hard to like pin down either of those things. I will give you like a few of the folks that I really like, really love. Like one of my favorite singers of all time is Tony Braxton. Whitney Houston is up there in terms of like Roberta Flack, soulful folks. Love Sam Cooke, love Al Green, love Maxwell. There's a current R&B duo called Division. I like Division a lot. So like anything heavy soul R&B for sure. I'm gonna say those are like some top singers. I was always a really big Prince fan. I'm gonna probably say, to be honest, with that album that you like, my favorite album. I have a few of them, but I'm gonna probably say Purple Rain is pretty much it's a Purple Rain is
Yes.
probably in my top five. Like
Yes.
there's some deep cuts on Purple Rain that I really love. So I'll say Purple Rain. Like Purple Rain's in top five for me for sure. So
Yes, definitely. I agree. It's a really
like
good one. Yeah.
yeah, just to like, and I'm also basing like how many great songs are on there, listening to
Hmm.
the full album. Yeah, I'll say that.
Right.
So,
Yes, it can. Yes, you can play it from beginning to end. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, exactly. Yes, you know. So,
Yes. Yes, I really enjoy music. I love music a lot. And Patti LaBelle is my favorite.
Patti
Um
LaBelle is great.
yeah, she's one of my she's probably my favorite. I've met her a few times and
Really?
yeah,
That's cool.
she's great. Stevie Wonder is another one of my favorites.
Stevie's
Just
fantastic.
yeah, just the songwriting, from the
Yep.
songs that he's written, for himself and other people, that
Yes.
people are not familiar with, that he wrote,
Yep.
is really cool. And just to think about his life and how he, uh, has really written some of the best songs,
Yep.
and living with a disability himself has been really, really interesting. It's really great. Music is really therapeutic and healing, and as they say, it brings people together,
It
and
does.
it
Yep.
really does. Because you can go to any concert at any time and see a wide range of people, different ages
Yep.
and different ethnicities and races, and it's just
Yep.
it really brings people together. I was recently with our Miracle League, we have a DJ that comes out every
Oh,
week with
okay.
us now, and
Awesome. Wow.
he started playing a song by Pitbull,
Okay.
and so he says to me, "Oh, have you ever seen his concert?" I said, "I've been trying to get back to a Pitbull concert since the first time I saw him."
Yeah.
I said now over half of the concert was in Spanish. I haven't had Spanish since high school.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't understand much of it. I said, but he's a great performer. I said
Yeah,
it
yeah,
didn't
and you like
matter.
loved it. Yep, and
I
you
said
loved
it
it.
didn't matter that I couldn't understand what he was saying.
Yep,
I said people were having a great time. That it was just a great vibe of it was just great. I said I've been trying to get back to
exactly.
the Pitbull concert since I saw him like 3 years ago.
That's
So
so cool. Yeah, and it's so true. Like you don't even have to. I listen to like music in other languages all the time.
yes.
Still vibe into it.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
have
Because
no
it
clue what they're saying, but it's like great.
Right. But you really get through their you get the message through
You
their
do,
feeling and
yeah.
their tone and just the music itself, the
Yes,
instruments, and you really
100%.
but yes, so thank you, James.
Of
Thank you
course,
so
Arthur.
much
Thank you for having me.
for this conversation. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for
to
having me.
share
It's
it.
been great.
Yes, you're welcome. And I look forward to staying in touch with you,
Yes.
and connecting. It's always great to connect with new people. And, so I will be in touch with you soon.
Please do. Yeah, I think we're not too far from each other, Arthur. So would definitely love to hang out
Great.
or meet
Yes.
up at some point. That'd be great. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really cool to talk to you.
Thank you for
You're
joining
welcome.
us for this episode of Our View, the podcast, where we amplify the voices and stories of those in the disabled community, one conversation at a time. If this story moved you, taught you something new, or sparked a different perspective, we'd love to hear from you. Write a review of the podcast on Apple Podcast and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Follow us on all social media platforms at Our View for Life 25. At Our View, we believe that disability is not a limitation. It is a powerful part of the human experience. So until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep seeing the world through our view.